as a founding PM, you need to be direct. You're functioning with a level of urgency. You're required to cut through the BS. You're required to say no more than yes.
Howdy, and welcome to Get With It. I'm Grace G, and I'm a partner at Amplify, the first investor for technical founders. Get With It is a show about how great technical products and companies get built. This episode is all about founding PMs, what they do, what they look for in companies, and how they make decisions. Today, I'm joined by two incredible founding PMs and also super close friends of mine. Karishma Irani, founding PM at New Relic, early PM at LaunchDarkly, and currently VP of Product at Scribe, and Tab Gilani, founding PM at Replit, and currently Head of Product and Growth at Kajabi. Our conversation covers everything from what the founding PM job is to how to work with founders and engineers at the earliest stages and how early PM roles evolve with the company. Let's get to it.
I'm so excited to have you guys here with me. I think this is the first podcast that I've actually done with close friends. And so to have you guys here is really, really special for the founding PM one. Maybe just introduce yourselves, where you were the first PM at, and what are you doing today?
Sure, I can go first. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Also, great apartment.
Thanks.
I'm Karishma, and I am currently the VP of Product at Scribe. Prior to this, I was at LaunchDarkly for 6 years, where I was the first PM, and before that, I was at New Relic, very much not as the first PM, but when I joined, it was actually for a new product that was being built and launched. So I was the founding PM for that.
Awesome.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me as well. It's great to be here with both of you.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversations about this, especially like Karishma and I on like founding PMs. So excited to be here. Currently, so my name is Tavish. Currently leading our growth team at Kajabi, where we're effectively helping creators build businesses. And so prior to that, I was the head of product at a company called Replit, where they're now effectively helping use AI agents to help build like programs and software. And so I led our product team there for about a couple of years, started as our first PM there, helped build out that like product team, the product function. And so that was a lot of fun. And then prior to that was helping build out the growth team at like YouTube Kids as well. So I was one of the first hires there. And then before that did a bunch of other startups that we don't talk about. They don't exist anymore. And I was a founding PM there as well, and realized that founding PM is a tough job. And I just like pain. So that's apparently
You do
what
like
I do.
pain.
I do like pain.
Wait, so how did
this?
how did we all meet and become friends? How did you guys meet?
That's a great question. So a mutual friend acquaintance introduced us, and I remember that her description of Tab was, I think he finds the PM discipline as frustrating as me. And I was like, wait, someone else who hates doing this and yet keeps doing it again and again, just like I do? I absolutely want to meet this person. So that's how we got introduced. And it's been interesting because over the years, I think I've reached out to Tab for so many things. I've reached out to him with questions about how do I build and scale a PM team? How do I scale back a PM team?
She says these are questions. They're really complaints.
They are.
But it's true.
I frame them as questions.
But no.
And most recently, as I was considering the opportunity at Scribe, I reached out to Tab for advice. And I was like, should I do this? I'm terrified. And he was like, yeah, you absolutely should, because you love being terrified and you love pain as much as I do. So
jury's still out if that was the right decision or not.
I love being there.
But it's true. I actually I think one of the things that Karishma and I actually connected on when we first got connected was the first time we got on a call. Karishma was like, cut the BS. Just tell me how you're actually feeling.
You actually are one of the most blunt people I've ever met.
I prefer direct, honest, and bold.
No, but I actually, to me, it was very refreshing. And two, I think it was great because I think being in a founding PM role is very lonely.
Yeah.
And I think especially during, I think when we got connected, I was more than halfway through my tenure at Replit. And I was every day was like honestly a little bit of a struggle. Like I would wake up and I would be like, I don't really know
What's going
the hell
on?
I'm supposed to do here, and the whole team is looking
To
me to like
Yeah.
help figure some of this stuff out. And so like I remember like when we got on a call, it was like, how do we like?
I think I asked you, I know how to do this part of my job, but I have no idea how to do
Yeah.
this part of my job. Can
Yeah.
you help me?
Yeah.
And I don't think
I
we
don't
actually
know.
got to any
Yeah,
answers.
I don't know if I actually
think we
gave
both
her
just
any
That's why we're
explained
doing the
and-
podcast.
Yeah. But I think the reason that's helpful is, at least for me, like it builds in like an instant connection.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people who like go through an experience like that and also share it so candidly and
Yeah.
bluntly, especially the first time you're meeting someone. So I think there's a level of vulnerability that I really appreciated from Karishma. I think like when we like met like so probably like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And all your friends, though, right?
Yes, definitely.
But I
Even
think,
more so than the people here.
I think it's actually not that surprising to me, because as a founding PM, you need to be direct. You're functioning with a level of urgency. You're required to cut through the BS. You're required to say no more than yes.
Yeah.
And so you just have to have thick skin. You need to be efficient in your communication, because you're not just doing one job. I think a lot of PMs glorify the job of a founding PM or romanticize it, but it's actually not glamorous at all. It sucks. It sucks.
true,
The
yeah.
job of a founding PM sucks, because you're there, but simultaneously trying to prove why you're there and trying to prove why your job should exist.
The glamorization and the proliferation of PMs is something the three of us have talked about. So like, let's set the record straight. What is the job of a founding PM?
My personal take is that the job of a founding PM is to do whatever it takes to like help the business succeed. Whether that's talking to your users, setting up like data, setting up campaigns, figuring out like what go-to-market needs to look like, hopping on support tickets, working with engineers and designers and figuring out like what that MVP needs to look like, getting it shipped in like 2 weeks to like get signal. And it's really whatever it takes to help the business succeed. Yeah, I don't know if like you have like a different take.
There was a very succinct thing you said to me once of the role of the founding PM. I'm wondering if you remember what it was.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
He doesn't remember anything he says.
You have the memory of a goldfish.
I do have the memory of a goldfish.
One thing that you told me, the role of the founding PM is to justify.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the role of the founding PM is to justify like being there.
Yeah, why their role exists.
Like why their role exists.
Yeah.
Like I think, you have to like, you basically show up every day to a role where people are questioning why you're there. For the longest time, the running joke is PMs don't have any technical hard skills.
And most don't.
And most don't. And you're there because you have a founder who has realized that they might be taking on too much. They're not willing to give up the product reins. You're there with engineers and designers who are thinking, we've built this product. What are you going to do with no like hard skills? And so I do think like the job of a founding PM does become a little bit. I think the job of a founding PM is to do whatever it takes to make the business succeed. But how you go about doing that is you need to justify why you're there every single day. So if you can do things that help make the business succeed, that's kind of how you prove out your point, or like how you like prove out like your job needs to exist.
So how did you guys, I mean, because there's so much content on how to get the job, not a lot of content on how to do the job. So how did you guys prove, I guess, your day-to-day value at Replit or LaunchDarkly or New Relic?
Yeah, I can talk about my experience at LaunchDarkly. So I joined LaunchDarkly in early 2019 to work closely with our SVP of engineering and our CTO. For anyone who's not familiar with LaunchDarkly, it's a feature management platform. So very technical. It's a product built by developers for developers. And it's actually even more meta, where the team uses the product to build the product, which makes my job fun. But when I first joined in 2019, the company was about 50 employees, 30 engineers. And honestly, in retrospect, it's one of the strongest teams I've ever worked with. Every single engineer there was extremely product minded. They weren't like, oh my gosh, we need a PM to come in and write a product spec. It was more like, yeah, I know exactly what to build. I can phase it out. I can even manage the launch. But we need a PM. And I kept hearing we need a PM, and it wasn't sure why. Yeah. So I think my job was to show up and be flexible, be curious, and have the attitude where I want to create value, but also figure out what that value is. So when I joined, there wasn't like a 30-60-90, as Tab probably knows this.
I hate 30-90s.
Wait, really? Okay, that's a hot take. But there wasn't a 30-60-90. There wasn't even much of an onboarding flow. It was basically, I showed up on my first day. My laptop was at my desk and I was like, you're ready to go. And I was like, I don't know which meetings to go to. I don't really have a team because there are other PMs. Yeah. And I was reporting to our VP of engineering at that time. And so my job was basically, I spent the first week mostly like absorbing everything around me, trying to figure out like, okay, who does what? Okay, cool. The engineers have the product requirements figured out. So I'm not going to create this massive PRD and slow things down and add a bunch of process where it's not needed. Yeah. Okay, wait, the revenue team seems a little annoyed about the fact that we're releasing things to production without giving them a heads up. So maybe that's where I can add value and actually introduce like a better release process or sales enablement process. But I think simply put, like you just have to go in with a set of skills, curiosity, ability to add value, humility, flexibility. But if you go in with a rigid idea of, I know exactly what a PM does, I know exactly what I'm going to do, you're probably going to fail in the first 30 days and be exited.
Yeah. I think my general take was that the reason there's like this like proliferation of PMs and the glamorization of the role is because everybody thinks it's a status oriented role where mini CEO, like everybody looks at you to like, everybody like looks at you to like make the decisions and things like that. The reality of the role is that you like influence without authority is actually very much true, especially in a founding PM context, because again, you have a CEO and a team that has very high agency. Like the PMs in like at bigger tech companies actually, for better or for worse, can be mini CEOs or whatever it is because of the fact that you're working with folks that might not have that high agency in what they're building, because a lot of them are there just for like a 9-to-5 job. The reality of being at a founding PM is that you're working with people who have really high agency. So the role of a PM is actually figuring out like, what is the best thing that we could be doing? And then convincing everybody else why the thing that they are working on right now is not the best thing to be doing. Yeah. And we know how people love to be told that they're working on the wrong things.
You're saying people don't listen to you all the time?
Yeah. No one listens to them.
That's true. Yeah. It's facts.
Where were your companies at when you joined as the founding PM?
So let me talk about New Relic first and then LaunchDarkly. So New Relic is an observability platform that helps with application and infrastructure monitoring. They're actually pretty massive. And when I joined New Relic, it was a very different stage from LaunchDarkly. I joined New Relic post-IPO. At the time, they had a PM team of almost 15 PMs, I want to say, and 15 product managers. And the reason I joined is because they were trying to establish themselves in the infrastructure monitoring market. So it was a new sort of market they were trying to enter to expand their TAM from just application performance monitoring to application and infrastructure performance monitoring. And they'd acquired a startup, a small 8-person startup in San Francisco to kind of give them a head start on the technology. So my job was to come in as the only PM in the San Francisco office, as the first PM on this product that doesn't exist, and to make it exist in the next 8 months for our annual conference called Future Stack. And I think if I knew back then what I know about the job now, what I know about what was needed for the role,
she'd still do it.
I probably would still do
She'd still do it.
But I would not advise my manager at the time to have hired me because it was interesting because even though I have a background in a master's in computer science and engineering and a technical background in general, there was a steep learning curve. It was my first time building for developers as an ICP. It was my first time working on an infrastructure monitoring tool. It was my first time working for a post-IPO company. And so I think the stage at which I came in and added value at New Relic or joined the team at New Relic, it was more about being a startup within a big company, trying to rush to this exciting milestone, which, by the way, we did. And we exceeded all our goals thanks to the amazing team we had. But I think even right there, I made it sound pretty glamorous. But in reality, what it was 8 months of working weekends nonstop, working weeknights. I think I fell asleep sitting up once. And and also the fact that we were successful had to do with New Relic's platform and the fact that they already were a post-IPO successful company with over 15,000 accounts that we could successfully create a cross-sell attach motion with.
Yeah.
But had that not been the case, things probably would have been very different. Which brings me to my experience at LaunchDarkly. So when I joined LaunchDarkly, the team was about 50 employees, 30 engineers. It was Series B. We were 8 million in revenue, I want to say, and 600 customers. So actually pretty significant in that it was post-product market fit.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I describe it as when I joined, my job wasn't to find product market fit. It was to find PMF fit, product manager founder fit. So how do you figure out where you fit in with the founder? Because with a lot of early companies, when you're joining, you're not joining because the founder doesn't know how to build the product or doesn't exactly know what to build. If you're joining at that stage, please don't join those companies because that is the founder's job and they should be figuring that out.
Yeah.
You're joining because the founder knows there is a need, but they're often not able to articulate what that need is. And it's your job to come in, build trust with the team, work with the founder closely, and figure out what that need is. So when I joined LaunchDarkly, very different stage from New Relic. And my job was to take a high-performing, product-minded engineering team and sort of streamline and scale everything they were building by establishing a product function. So I helped hire and manage a lot of the early PMs, which is how we met we talked about it and figure out, okay, cool, this team got a product from 0 to 10 million in ARR, but how do we scale it to be 200 million, a billion in ARR?
Yeah. I want to talk about the founder CEO dynamics, but I want you to talk about where Replit was when you joined.
Yeah. I mean, I can touch on the founder CEO dynamic as well in relation to talking about where Replit was at. So when I joined Replit, we were, I think, 18 employees. We had just closed a Series A. Through my interview process, I think I met like 12 of the 18 members. And like when I came in, I think it was 3-4 million users. Replit now is close to like 30 million, I think. And so a lot of my job when I first came in, I came in as like our like founding PM with a focus on growth. Hey, help us figure out how we like monetize some of the like this huge user base that we have. How do we continue growing it and scaling it? And I came in and I was like, all right, what are the metrics or what is the goals that we have? And there weren't any. It was kind of just like, it's funny, we talk about like vibe coding now. It's like vibe-based building. And it was great because I was like, everybody's having a great time building this amazing product. But for me, I was like, we need just enough structure to like help us be focused in like what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. So our head of engineering would joke that my first role at Replit was actually data engineer.
Yeah.
Because I was like fixing our like data infrastructure, getting like amplitude in because we didn't have any analytics. And then I remember like Amjad at one point messaged me, I think like 2 or 3 months after I started, where he was like, dude, I don't need to write like crazy SQL queries to figure out our retention anymore. And I was like, yeah, you should be able to get that at like a click of a button.
Yeah.
And so we can make decisions a lot faster. And so my role effectively became like a force multiplier.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you get the team to move a lot quicker? I'm not telling the team exactly what to build all the time, but my role is to help them make those decisions faster. So I think for me, the way that I work with touching on the CEO, founding PM dynamic, I actually would talk about this with Replit's founder, like Amjad, a lot, is that I will like Amjad's like vision for Replit is great. Like I think Replit's vision is right now it's empower 1 billion software creators in the world. That vision came out of a conversation that he and I had, and that was a structured brainstorming session that I had to lead with our executive team in like figuring that out. Because when I joined, Amjad was like, I just think the way people build software right now is fundamentally broken. And I was like, let's figure out how we make that into a mission for us.
How soon after joining did you lead that session?
That was probably 4 or 5 months after joining. And I would tell Amjad this all the time. I was like, my job is like, Amjad has the vision. Like he sees the world and he's like, I think the world should be like this. But my job is to figure out all the steps that we need to do to like get to that place, because that might not be his strength.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, okay, let's figure out what that is. Let's make that a little bit more defined, and let's figure out the things that we need to do to like work backwards from that to get to that point.
What if you disagree with his vision of the product though?
But I think that's why I joined.
Yeah.
And like I joined because I trusted in his vision of the product. And that's one of the reasons like so one of the things I always tell people is like when you're interviewing for a founding PM role, go out to dinner with them. Get to know them. Like really understand like what they're trying to build, because if you don't actually believe in what they're building, you're going to fail at your job. Like you're not even going to be bought in.
Yeah.
And so I remember like during my interview process, like I met with Amjad probably like 4 times during that like interview process. And I was like, this dude is sharp. He has really strong product sense, product vision. And I'm bought into what he's trying to like build with Replit. And I think I can figure out what are the steps that we need to take at least right now to help us get to that point or make small strides towards that point.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm hearing from you guys is when you start the founding PM role, it's almost as you have to build up the team's trust in your ability to set the product direction.
Yes.
It's not something that you do or can do from day one. Do you agree with that statement? 1, and then 2, what are the best ways that you guys have found personally to build that trust with both the founders as well as like engineering and all the different cross-functional teams, given that they're not your direct reports?
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that statement. Something you said stuck with me, which is whenever I have a first like product hire, a PM hire, or when I talk to founders and advise them on, usually I'm advising them on not hiring PMs.
That's true, actually, yeah.
You've been witness to that.
What are the misconceptions of like people thinking they need to hire a PM outside of the obvious one, which is you don't have product market fit yet?
You should not be hiring a PM for that. We have a lot of engineers we should hire a PM. We have a lot of designers we should hire a PM. Oh, we're at 100 million in ARR, or sorry, 100K in ARR. We probably should hire a PM. Oh, we need a PM to talk to customers. Like there are so many of these.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to think of it is any job that somebody on the team feels like a pain or a burden or they don't want to do, they're like, oh, maybe we could outsource that to a PM.
It's the shit work.
It's the shit work. And so I actually think that misses just like the value of like what like a PM can do as a force multiplier. Like I think like people talk about like 10x engineers. Having a 10x PM on your team will massively change your trajectory.
But having 10 okay PMs will actually slow you down.
Yes. And so I think that's where people react to. So when people are hiring or they're given the advice of, oh, like you need like a PM, a lot of it is because the CEOs or founders are getting stretched too thin. And they're not able to actually manage like the team. But the reality is like a PM isn't helpful for managing work. They're more so like if you actually are hitting like a point in time where your team is not, you're not able to be the force multiplier for the team, and you actually need somebody to come in and like do that work. Like the simple example of like the CEO not needing to spend like 10 hours doing SQL queries to figure out his like retention, or like engineers like having at their fingertips what like customers want or need. Like stuff like that is like great. Like that's like for like order of magnitude like force multiplier effects. But like somebody to come in and just do project management, like you probably don't need that. Like you probably just need like a better system to like manage your sprints or like your like projects. So I think that's how I think about like when people shouldn't hire PMs. But I think for the most part, people shouldn't be. I think founding PMs are set up in a not great way, and I think people actually tend to hire too early.
And what do you guys think is the difference in responsibility between like the founding PM and then the PMs that come after?
I think the founding PM is kind of a little bit of the. I'm like, so at least for the way that I've seen it play out, is that the founding PMs it's completely blank slate.
Yeah.
And so actually, it's funny because there's instances of first founding PM and second founding PM, where you have the first founding PM that comes in and starts, and they actually don't do a great job.
They fail.
And they fail.
How often does that happen?
More often than you would think.
Yeah, it happens a fair bit, I'd say. And then the second founding PM comes in, but now the team has also learned from the first founding PM on what not to do. And so when the second founding PM comes in, they're actually set up a little bit better in charting that territory. And so when PMs come after them, they kind of default to what this like second founding PM is doing, because it's learnings built organization.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, this at Replit, it was like, oh, Tab built out like the data stuff. So one of the strongest PMs I ever had on my team was like, I'm immediately going to go figure out data because the team doesn't fully understand it. And that's how I'm going to sell my value to the team. And that's exactly what he did. Anytime people would have questions about anything regarding like usage on the platform, or like how our users are like doing, or customers are like performing, what features they like, things like that, they would go to him. And I wouldn't need to do that anymore because he was now the subject matter expert, and that freed up my time to go chart other territory. And at some point, your PMs level up and they'll start charting other territory by themselves that like the business needs as well. So I think it kind of gives the PMs that come after, at least like in my experience, like a blueprint for like the thing that they can anchor on really quickly, easily. And then once they get that in a really good grasp, then they can start branching out and charting new territory.
And what were those new territories?
So new territories for Replit, I think, was doing like explorations around other like areas that we might want to explore. So while I was there, I think we explored like 7 different like products. Like we explored like communities feature at Replit. We explored like a currency, which we called cycles, but that's been like deprecated. We hosting was like a big thing. Ghostwriter, which was our initial AI coding companion. All of those things were initially explored by product managers at Replit. And so it allowed them to flex on a lot of those areas, because now you had somebody dedicated thinking about how the business is growing like in the future and where those opportunities might be.
Yeah. I have a pretty concise way of describing what I think the first PM should be, the founding PM. I think they just need to be a type A person that isn't afraid to say no to the founder.
Yeah.
And I feel like every subsequent PM that follows is probably going to be a little further removed from directly interacting with the founder. Even if there's the same reporting structure, just because they came later, don't have as much face time, not as close a relationship. But I think the first PM needs to be a pretty type A person. Me.
That's true.
You are very type A. But like, do you build up to that trust, or do you need to feel like day one you can say no? Because what we've been talking about before is building up to that trust, right?
So the funny thing is, there are certain, and this is where I think it depends on the founders that you work with. There are certain founders who, if you say no on the first day, they'll be like, oh, they get it. So I think trust gets built up over a long period of time. That's just the reality of like human nature. Like nobody's going to trust you out from the gate from day one. But I think type A, but also like, if you're a PM with just like some semblance of social intelligence, you're gonna have to recognize what makes the founders tick.
Yeah.
And if you don't realize that what makes the founders tick is directly tied to your job success and satisfaction as well, in addition to obviously making the business successful, it's gonna be very hard for you to do your job.
Yeah, for sure. The way I describe that to my PM team today is find the least friction way of achieving the same outcome.
Yeah.
You can get the same outcome, which is saying no to that white glove feature for that large enterprise customer. You can choose to say no and decline building it, but you can do it without pissing off the founder and the sales team and building trust. Or you can just be like, no, I think this is a bad idea, and not explain your thought process, and then the team doesn't trust you. So I actually think that's...
Are there examples of that from your career? Like, how do you say no gracefully?
I actually think, so I Replit, I think, that's what Karishma tells me every time I ask for help.
Let's dig up the bodies.
Actually, so this is maybe a little bit, this was the case at Replit for sure.
Yeah.
It's so easy to nerd snipe people. And
when
I say it's so easy to nerd snipe people, is that you engage them in an intellectual debate about some big brain shit that they want to work on, and they'll engage with you because they're super early at a company that has a very lofty mission, especially if you're working in consumer. Like, I can't speak for like B2B, but consumer is always like take over the world or like...
That's our mission in B2B.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's nice. It's just going to come out of this episode. It's going to be like, Tab just hates B2B.
Tab and I have this constant debate where he's like, I want 1 million customers paying me $1 each.
True.
And I'm like, I want one customer paying me $1 million.
Hey,
not one.
I don't know. Okay, I don't know about $1. Yeah, that's true.
No,
you guys have both worked with technical founders. How do you think working with a technical founder differs from the norm?
I wish I could tell you, but I've actually only worked with technical founders. I can tell you what it's like working with a technical founder, though. It's funny because when a lot of people think about technical founders, they think about a 20-something who drop out of college, like in a hoodie, who like hacked up the first app on a weekend. And it's totally the opposite of that. Both at LaunchDarkly and now at Scribe, the founders I've worked with, the CTOs and co-founders, are both technical, both actually engineered the first version of the app, and are now like absolutely wildly aware of the GTM motion, the business dynamics, interacting with the sales team and the customer on a daily basis, like pushing for fundraising, thinking about our growth metrics and conversions, talking about like marketing, positioning, and messaging. So it's funny because a lot of people might think that the role of a founding PM is more critical in technical companies because the founder lacks the business acumen, and it's absolutely not true. That's a myth in my opinion. And I have actually learned more about the business side of things than the technical side of things from working with technical co-founders. And that's actually why I gravitate towards those companies, because it's baffling and mesmerizing for me to see the same person kind of traverse the whole spectrum from being a technical co-founder to a business co-founder to being a customer advocate all in once.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I would actually agree with that. I think the technical co-founder, I think, is a little bit of a misnomer. At the end of the day, they're just founders who understand the market, the business, and their users. At the end of the day, that's all you really need to understand. You need to understand who you're building for, and you need to understand like what you're building that solves their like pain point. And founders understand that more intimately than anybody else. And so I think in my experience working with technical like founders, whether it was at Replit or at startups prior to that, like Leap.ai when I joined was started by two ex-Google engineers. And they were building like a recruiting platform, and they had a very clear idea of the problem that they were solving and who they were building for. And so I actually think like when I came in, it was a lot of, again, like this is the end state they want to get to. They can see a world where these things behave this way. And then the technical aspect is actually just like the foundation for a lot of how it's built. And so my job was really figuring out like how do we package all of that and then use our sort of competitive advantage of people, process, product to then get us to that point. So I actually think like similarly, I've learned a lot from working, I think like with like technical founders, because they understand how their product is built so deeply. And I also think the reason I keep saying technical founders is a misnomer is because if you're a founder that's non-technical, that you didn't build a product, you better know how your product works.
You build those technical skills.
Yeah. Like if you don't know how your product works and you're a founder at a company, you're going to have a very hard time just explaining to your customers why your product is a solution that they need to be picking.
Or if your customer is asking for higher rate limits for a period of time to support a migration, you need to know what the implications are going to be on your COGS so that you can agree or disagree.
But do you think that's why founders sometimes hesitate to give control to a founding PM? Because we talked about how a lot of PMs come from non-technical backgrounds.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the Amplify portfolio, there's so many technical products. So if you're a non-technical PM working on a technical product, maybe you're lacking a lot of customer data to guide your intuition. What do you do?
So I had a message. This is actually funny. I received a message from an engineer who at Replit, I think about like 4 or 5 months ago, I was like chatting with them and they were like, oh, we were just talking about how many test accounts you have at Replit. It's more than 250.
Why did you open 250 tests?
Because I am constantly in the product
to fabricate
testing.
the metrics.
Hey, my job is growth, okay? But at Kajabi, it's the same. At Kajabi, I have more than 250 test accounts as well. And the reality is that I need to be in there deeply understanding like the nuances of the product and the ins and outs. So actually, it doesn't matter if you're technical, non-technical. Something Karishma actually touched on earlier was you need to be curious. And if you like curiosity, I think is like arguably like one of the strongest like skills you can have as a founding PM because there's so much uncharted territory and you just need to get in there and figure out and map out everything that exists there. So I actually think just getting your hands dirty is probably like the best way to go about doing that.
And what are good ways to get your hands dirty outside of create 250 tickets?
That's the only way.
That's actually the only way. I think talking to customers, like I think as soon as I joined, this is why I said I was like, I hate the 30, 60, 90 day shit because I'm like 90 days, you might not have a job if you're a founding
PM. Oh my gosh. We talked about the PM who 90 days later presented a slide deck.
Oh yeah.
There was a PM who reported to one of us. I'm just going to keep it a mystery. Who 90 days into their job scheduled this massive meeting, invited a bunch of stakeholders, and presented why their job should exist.
Yeah.
But not in a way that didn't show the value, like, hey, I did these things and that's why my job creates value. It was literally the job posting being presented back to us. It was the most baffling thing ever.
Yeah. So I think the thing is a lot of it is a lot of it like proof of work, I think, rather than like proof of like output. And so I think it's more so creating test accounts, talking to customers, talking to the team. Honestly, just ship something. Just ship something within like your first like week. I think when I joined Replit, the first day I joined a demo. The second day I like met with the team. Third day I had like a spec out. By the end of that week, I was partnering with an engineer. We already had an experiment out. Got the experiment out. Got some learnings. And I was like, all right, I have gone through a full cycle.
Yeah.
I know how this team works. I know what this team cares about.
Time to ship. It's an important
Time to
metric.
ship, yeah.
Time to
And
ship.
actually, that's the best thing you could do as a founding PM. You come in, you ship something of value, you've built credibility with the team while building that thing, as well as shown the founder the value that you can have. I want to touch upon something you mentioned earlier. You asked about the dynamic of a founding PM working with technical co-founders. And I just thought of something that actually is unique to that situation, which is if you think about the average technical founder, they built the product, had this idea, and are now probably getting pulled in a million different directions with a million different responsibilities. In that situation, you as a founding PM could come in, identify areas like hiring more PMs and managing them, or sprint planning for the engineers, or how PM and design should work, or how features are launched and the whole GTM and launch process. You could focus on these things and also take customer calls away from the co-founder. The idea not being to abstract them away from it, but to take on some of that burden to free them up so they can continue doing the things that bring them joy. So, which in most cases is writing code. So both at LaunchDarkly and at Scribe, surprisingly, the technical co-founders continued writing code and shipping PRs for a surprisingly long time. In fact, our Scribe CTO, my manager, Aaron, still finds time to debug issues and write code. And you'll actually be surprised at how much the team appreciates it. But in my first or second month there, we were chatting about something and he goes, oh, by the way, thank you so much. I now have an extra 3 hours every single week so I can write code. And that's actually one of the best things you can do as a founding PM, to free up your founder to do the things that bring them joy, whether it's writing code or being on customer calls or whatever it might be.
Well, the other thing is also the thing that brings them joy is tend to be valuable to the business.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. So I think I think that's part of the job is kind of just like enable everybody to do their best work.
Okay. So far, I actually have a question for us. So far, we have focused a lot on what kind of founding PMs you should not hire and what are failure states. I think we're bogging down our viewers. So let's try to be optimistic.
Success states.
What does a successful founding PM look like? And I want to summarize something a few of us talked about, or what we talked about a few minutes ago. And it's basically, you're gonna fail if you come in and you think you have a strong product vision. In fact, I would discourage you from joining a team or joining a company or joining a co-founder or a founder if they don't have a strong product vision.
If the founder does not.
Exactly. So as a founding PM, the best thing that you could do and the way you could be successful is find a founder who has a strong product vision, come in and then build a strategy. I don't mean strategy as an artifact. I mean it as a noun. Build a strategy on how to make that happen for them and for the company. And that looks very different at different companies, different products, different GTM motions, and with different founders. In some cases, the founder is literally like, hey, I want to focus on the technology. Can you figure out the product delivery side of things? And in some cases, it's just you turn into a clone of them, a second them, to make things happen. And this is what you were describing. What are the steps leading up to realizing the product vision? What are the trade-offs?
Yeah, I mean, if I think back to the things that convinced me to join as a founding PM at all the companies I was at, I wholeheartedly believed in the founders.
Yeah.
Just, they sold me on the vision. And so I think if you're joining a company where you don't believe in the founders, you don't believe in what they're building, you don't believe in the market, you shouldn't join.
Yeah.
Just straight up. And I think it is more applicable to the founding PM role than I would argue than any other role that could exist on that team, because of the fact that your job is to effectively, like, to some extent, be a mouthpiece for the founder and convince everybody else as well that this is the thing to be doing.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you don't wholeheartedly believe in like what you're building.
Does that have to stay true throughout your entire journey at the company?
It doesn't. I think, but you should still believe in the vision. You might disagree on like how you might get there.
Yeah.
But
and over time, you might start influencing the vision too.
And I think that's the role. And I think like when you have those like creative differences or whatever that might be, like the onus is on you, because I honestly can't imagine that would happen like within like the first like couple months of you joining. Because I was like, if you join a founder whose vision changes in 2 months, like I don't know if that's a founder I would recommend joining. I
would actually recommend the founder not to hire a PM at that stage.
Yeah, exactly. But I think like it's also like, do founders even know like whether or not?
And the answer is no, right? I know you and I have chatted about this, but I have over the years talked to founders who are looking to hire their first PM, and they go, Karishma, you've been an early PM at a few startups. What's your advice? And my advice is typically don't hire a PM. That's the first piece of advice. I would give that to most companies at any stage. I'm just kidding. But I typically turn it back to them and I'm like, okay, let's assume you have a great high-performing PM at your company tomorrow. What has it freed you up to do that you cannot do today?
I think that's a good question.
And typically, they don't have an answer for that. They don't have a good response. And they're like, oh, the investors think it's time for us to bring in a PM, or someone recommended a great candidate to me, or the engineers and designers are asking when we should hire a PM. And I'm like, but what's the need? Like, what does it free you up to do? And I feel like founders should only consider bringing in a founding PM when they have a really strong answer. So at this point, I'm actually going to share a personal anecdote, which Grace knows about. Grace put me in touch with Aaron, the CTO and co-founder at Scribe, where I'm at now. And in my first 10 minutes, I was like, great, sounds like you're hiring for a VP of product. My advice is don't. And he was
don't hire for the job that you're going to hire me for in the future.
Exactly. And he was just mortified, and he's like, why should I not hire a VP of product? And I was like, why would you hire a VP of product? Like, it sounds like you have a great team, you have a great business, like everything seems to be going fine. By introducing a critical new hire in this role, you're actually introducing more risk and more change, and the downside is much higher than the upside. Anyway, obviously
you landed the role. So
I landed the role. Obviously, it was a power move. I was playing 5D chess. No, I'm kidding. It was not a power move. But I think about the founding PM role the same way, which is if you're a founder considering hiring your first PM, sit down and just don't think about writing down the job description, the location, the comp band. Don't think about any of that, the reporting structure. Just sit and write down what this person frees you up to do that you're not able to do today that's critical for the business. And if you find yourself writing down, oh, I need this person to come in and build a product vision, a vision for the product, then don't hire that person. I would argue that's your job. Figure that out first, because this person, to your point, should be a force multiplier to helping accomplish that vision.
Yeah. I think building on that, I think some of the things that, going back to your question on success states that you might like have for like a founding PM, I think if you notice that like your development team, designers, like across the board, they're getting further. Like there's always a gap that happens between perception and reality of what like your customers are like feeling. And I think as that gap widens, you actually need somebody to come in and like bridge that gap. Like I think that's like a good opportunity for you to do that, especially as the founder gets more and more responsibilities, like around like a team and a company and growing the business and things like that. Like that's where like a PM could be really valuable. If you feel like you're working on like too many disparate things all at once, you're kind of throwing spaghetti at a wall. Like you get somebody to come in and actually focus some of that effort. Like I think like that's where some of that stuff like could be valuable. I think like the force multiplier thing is a really powerful analogy, because you want somebody to come in who can up level the full team, like not just somebody to come in and do a great job. Like you need them to be that's why you kind of need strong generalists. Like you need somebody to come in, go to like one engineer and be like, why are you architecting this feature in this particular manner? And why is it going to take you 4 weeks to ship when we can just ship something in 2 weeks? And that engineer might be like, well, like we didn't really know why we would ship it in 2 weeks. And your founding PM can be like, well, we need to ship it in 2 weeks because we have this other launch that we need to do in like 4 months, and there's like dependencies there. Or you might have a designer who's like working on like one like feature, and they're not collaborating with like another designer who's working on another feature, but they're using the same component or the same system. And as a founding PM, you're like, you see the full journey end to end, and you're like, why are both of you working on the same thing that accomplishes the same problem in 2 different ways?
But that comes from experience. So how much experience should a founding PM have? How, for someone who wants to be a founding PM, how do they aggregate a really good generalist portfolio of work?
I actually don't think it necessarily. So it needs to, it can come from experience when you're working in a market or for a product that you're not as familiar with. But I think if you're, for the most part, again, like if you go back to join a company whose vision you believe in, whose market you understand. So if you're joining as a founding PM and you don't have quote unquote experience, a lot of the times you'll default to like your own innate like experience that you might have. So at Replit, one of the PMs that I ended up hiring had actually built an app on Replit. So he actually understood like the user journey end to end. He had the use cases clearly mapped out. And even though like he had no PM experience, he came in and he hit the ground running. Because he could understand like what like things like our team was missing in that like holistic like user journey.
Yeah.
And so I think like if you don't have experience, you need to build your like intuition and sense by like using and testing the product and talking to people who are power users of the product, if that's not you yourself. I feel like I got this like feedback like when I was first starting out in product, where it was like, oh, like PMs shouldn't be like customers of the product, or like you should put yourself in your customer's shoes. And I'm like, you should be testing the product each and every single day. And
I mean, I imagine that feedback was probably trying to get at like, don't listen to exactly what the customers are saying and try to extract the intent.
Yeah.
But oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I still like, I'm just like, I think when I see the glorification of like the role, when I see PMs read that, they're like, oh, I'm responsible for the experience that all these people are going to take. They're not me, but I am the one setting the experience. And I'm like, if that's you, like you'll actually set it better for them, because like you can actively empathize with them.
Yeah. That's a really good segue. So assuming the PM role is needed, post product market fit, you're trying to scale from early users to a broader market. How do you do that successfully? What are some of the mistakes maybe you guys have seen PMs do or yourself have made scaling a product?
I think one mistake that I made in the early days was thinking that if I build a better product, more users will come and they'll want to pay us more. And I think a lot of PMs go through that idealistic thought process. But in reality, the nuance of like B2B SaaS products is just so much more complex than that. So contrasting that to now how I think about product now, when our team builds something, I still want them to build the most valuable version of that feature that solves a real pain point. A question I ask my team is, why would I pay for this? That's a way of testing, like, does it have any real value? My team's actually sick of hearing that. But
do you feel like that's the most important question?
No, but I think it gets at the question behind the question is this valuable? Does someone need it? And that's the question behind the question. So I think now when I think about scaling products, some questions I wish I would have asked myself sooner are, okay, but like, how does this product, how does this valuable feature I'm building actually influence the next 6 features we're about to build? Or how does it fit into our pricing and packaging strategy? Or how can we capture a whole new market based on this feature? And I think I had like my blinders on and I was very focused on, I know these 6 customers want this and I'm going to build it. And that's great. But as the founding PM, you're not just building a feature. You're not just building a set of features on this massive roadmap. You're actually building the product for the first time for an unknown market and an unknown set of customers. And it's your job to figure out how big that market is, how many customers those are, and if they would pay you money or not.
Yeah. I think like we had
I think you would appreciate that as a growth PM.
Tab's
always talking about money and I'm always talking about customer experience. So this is quite a role reversal.
I'm sorry, are you a designer I work with?
How dare you?
But I do think when I think about like scaling or going from like an early group of users to like scaling, like a lot of at Replit we did that, right? Like I talked about like some of the experiments that we ran around like cycles or communities or Ghostwriter, the hosting product that's like live right now. A lot of that is kind of like learning by failure a little bit. The distinction is that, or rather, the reality is that at a startup, and especially in growth, 80% of the things you do are not going to work.
Yeah,
that's just the reality of the role. That's the reality of the job. Like that's one of the reasons why like ton of startups fail and like a lot of them don't make it. If they did, like everybody would be doing them, and you'd have like a blueprint to success. But that doesn't exist, and so. There's a distinction that I want to create is that when you first start as a founding PM, your job is to build trust. And so I try to anchor everybody, and the advice that I give to a lot of like early PMs is you need to get a win early. And that win doesn't always need to be I acquired these many users or I added this much revenue. The win can always be I helped the team unlock or understand this part of the business that nobody knew. And it's a gold mine. And we're now building on top of it. That allows you to actually do more experimentation in the future when you start scaling up, because it builds credibility with the team, and the team is now like, okay, like this PM that I'm working with is like figuring out all the different ways that we could test this and approach this or experiment with it to help us scale up. So to the point of like Karishma's question on why would somebody pay for this, a lot of the times you might not know. And a lot of times you kind of have to which is where this like time to ship becomes really important, because your speed at which you get stuff out and learn is what allows the team to like actually scale up really fast.
I think you can get attached to every single thing you're building.
Exactly.
As an early PM, as a founding PM, you're essentially a growth PM for a product that doesn't exist.
Yeah. So I think like the mistakes I think that like we've encountered, honestly, every time I look back on the mistakes, the mistake that I think like we encountered was letting things go on for too long.
Yeah.
We should have made the cut earlier.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stuff that we had at, whether it was at Replit or like Leap.ai, even at YouTube Kids, like when I was there, like I was like, that project took like 4 months, or we let the experiment run, or like we let it run for 3 or 4 months. All of that has a cost. And I think every time I look back on those experiences, I'm like, shit, we should have just made the call to cut them earlier, moved on, and figured out what we need to do next.
Yeah.
Because every time we don't make that call earlier, we accrue like debt and like decision cost that then like basically paralyzes the team to like making like more decisions in the future.
But I almost feel like it's a rite of passage.
It is a rite of passage,
yeah. You can say that. I can sit here and say that, which is, hey, if you're a founding PM, like be willing to make that cut early.
Yeah.
Be willing to make that decision. Sunset that feature, kill that experiment, whatever it might be. But it's easier said than done.
It is,
and it's from having made those mistakes that one of the first things I've done now at Scribe is actually introduce a process for sunsetting features. I'm like, we're going to kill things that people aren't using, and we're going to celebrate those as much as we celebrate our new product launches.
We just had a project ship at Kajabi, and one of the like sections in the project is literally, why are we unbuilding it?
Love it.
So I do think that's important.
Yeah.
What other like systems, processes, rituals do you think is important in helping scale the product and product org up? We talked about culture of experimentation, time to ship, time to move on. Anything else?
I think for me, one of the things that I did, and this wasn't just at Replit, but also at Leap.ai or at like YouTube, every week I would just send a weekly summary of like all the shit that the team worked on and how our company metrics are doing.
I'm sorry. So you're talking about managing up, right?
Yeah. That's effectively what it was. And I would send it to the whole team. And the team loved it. Like, they were like, this is great. Like, we get to see all the stuff that everybody is working on. And it's a small team. So everybody already kind of knows what everybody's working on. But to have it just live in one place and expected as a weekly end of week email, it's kind of nice. It it brought people together. It got people aligned on like what our goal is and like what we're trying to accomplish and what we're trying to do here. And that's not an email that.
It was an email?
Yeah, it's not an email that founders even want to write. Yeah, it's crazy. It was an email.
Yeah, it keeps getting worse.
Well, actually, you know what the funny thing is? That because it was an email, I knew it would always be at the top of everybody's inbox because nobody else sent emails at the company. So I think it was like even like things like that I think was really valuable. We had weekly wins where we would share like where we're at in terms of like whether our like growth targets or like the stuff that we're working on. Demos were like super important. Demos were like a great way for us to just like get like feedback quick and out the door. My demos, I think, a little bit later got incentivized to making the founders feel happy, and they moved away from getting good feedback, which is kind of unfortunate.
Classic.
Yeah. But I think some of those systems are really valuable to, at the end of the day, like you need a culture of feedback to move really quickly. And so demos, like rituals that enable like everybody to be on the same page, that doesn't create information asymmetry, is important. Like if you have one person who knows one thing and another person who knows something else, like you need both of them to know both those things. So anything that you can do to like create that shared information, like hierarchy, I think like rituals like that, I think are very, very valuable.
My response is, so I have two responses. One is a process, which is a variation of something you said. And the second is a cultural norm. So the process is that as the founding PM, you end up being on customer calls a lot. And obviously, as much as you try to take your engineers, your designer on these calls with you, it's not sustainable because as engineers, your primary output is writing code. As designers, it's creating designs. As PMs, it's not creating slides. It is being on customer calls so you can gather customer insights and inform your roadmap, validate, invalidate product bets that your organization is making. And so over time, as you're on these calls, it obviously gets a little unrealistic to expect engineers and designers to be on every single call with you. But what you want to make sure is you share these insights with the rest of the organization. So at LaunchDarkly, we had a massive culture of sharing customer insights from every single customer call. And it's actually kind of baffling how we kept it going even as the organization scaled to over 500 employees. And people would genuinely read these and respond to them. And so if a PM was on a call pitching something new, they'd come and write like a TLDR of the call, like who the customer was, here's the link to the recording, and here's what I learned, something fascinating. And it's not minutes from the call, it's literally just insights. Like, what is something you want the rest of the organization that is working towards building the same product as you, what is something you want them to know? And so that's sort of a process thing. And I think a cultural thing is you have similar to being a founding PM, you have your early team. You have your early engineering team, you have your early design team. And they sort of have this energy about them. Like they have the sense of responsibility and obviously a lot of knowledge, like historical knowledge. but they have this hum, this buzz that almost never goes away because they were the early founding team.
Mm-hmm.
And something I think is extremely important is to spread these people across different teams and across the parts of the organization so that they can disseminate that same culture so that it can like grow as part of your organization. They can help instill that same sense of accountability, responsibility, excitement, pride in every new engineer that's hired.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's a recipe for success.